Welcome to Chasing Hardware, the podcast that sits down with the sports figures you grew up with and hears their stories. Welcome to Chasing Hardware. I'm your host, Rich Lamello. My guest today is in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. She's a true pioneer in the sport, growing up competing on the playgrounds of New York City and playing AAU ball in Harlem before a stellar career at Old Dominion, where she won 2 titles and was a 2-time Player of the Year. She then played in a few early women's pro leagues, where she won another championship, played with the men in the startup USBL in the mid-'80s, and then at the age of 39, played in the inaugural season of the WNBA. And there's a lot more we're going to get to. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Chasing Hardware, Nancy Lieberman. Nancy, welcome.
Welcome. It's great to be here with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. Obviously, there is, as evidenced by the intro, there is way more than we'll be able to get to, but I'm going to give it a shot. I always like to just, kind of start off with the beginning. You're born in Brooklyn. You go to Far Rockaway High School. You and your mom and your brother moved out to Queens when you were very young. You played at Far Rockaway High School, but you were also playing on, the playgrounds of Queens and other boroughs, through the years. Tell me a little bit about, kind of the early years. And also, I always love to find out, kind of what was the hook for you? I know your older brother was not a basketball player per se, and your mom wasn't necessarily. What was kind of the hook for you to get involved in basketball?
Well, when I was growing up, I just needed something to keep me occupied. A lot of kids were turning to gang or drugs or whatever they chose to do. And, for my growing up, I just needed to get out of the house. My dad was not there throughout my childhood. It was a rough time in our, no food, no heat, no electricity, one grandparent away from food stamps. So I was kind of like angry, and, sports gave me a chance to express myself and to feel good about myself. And, when kids are making fun of you because your backpack is a brown paper garbage bag or your pencil bag is a brown paper sandwich bag, and the only thing I knew at that stage was, to fight, and I was getting in fist fights every day because people were hurting my feelings. So sports became that intersection of how to utilize, my anger, my passion, and I started playing football. I played Pee Wee football. Then I started playing baseball, PAL, until they told me I couldn't play because I was a girl. That was the first time I had heard that. And then I went to the YMCA in my neighborhood, and they said you could play on the boys team. And I said, I'd love to. So that was really important to me, especially the people at the YMCA that said, yeah, we want you to be here and we're not blocking your path. And then everything else after that, my brother didn't play sports. He was a dentist, or he was a brainiac. But I fell in love with Muhammad Ali at 10 years old, and I followed him and, just was mesmerized like many other people were with Muhammad Ali. And he was kind of that driving force, for me making the Olympic team in high school, playing in the Pan Ams. In 1975, I was 16, the Olympics, 1976, I was 17. But, he used to say he's the greatest of all times. And that's what I was striving to be, the greatest of all times. And I got a scholarship to college at Old Dominion University. I could not have gone to college without a scholarship. And by the grace of God, it changed my life. It was one of the coolest things that ever happened to me. I loved Norfolk. I loved the people, the university. For all the naysayers, that Nancy can't do this, Nancy can't do that. Well, Nancy went to college, and Old Dominion goes 125-15 in 4 years. We win the NIT, we go 30-4. Junior year, we win the national championship, we go 37-1. Senior year, we go 35-1, and we win back-to-back championships. And I'm Player of the Year in college basketball for the second time. So that on the outside showed that I had become something, but in the inside, I was still broken and angry. And then a fateful day in 1979, where I'm asked to go to the New York Stock Exchange to do an appearance for the Olympic Committee, going up the escalator with my mom and my high school friend. And I said, who's the other athlete? You know, I'm kind of faking, nah, you know, Nancy Lieberman, who's the other athlete? And he goes, yeah, we're going in the room, the green room. I go, who's the other athlete? And he goes, it's you and Muhammad Ali. I'm telling you, Rich, my heart was thumping. The man who changed my life is sitting in that room.
Yeah.
And the door opened, and it's like the Oprah moment, you know, the light over this man. I couldn't breathe. And then finally, you know, he asked me to come over, we say hi, and you know, we just start talking, and Ali said to me, you know, tell me about yourself. And I was like, he goes, your mom says you're good. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm the greatest of all times. And he goes, there's two of us. And I go, yeah, and I hit people too. And he goes, you got to stop hitting people. I said, you hit people. He goes, I get paid to hit people. I said, I hit people because they bother me. They annoy me. So he was the first person that actually looked at me deeper than just what I had done. And we go back to the Plaza Hotel. And for the next 3-4 hours or however long, he was teaching me about racism. He was teaching me about philanthropy. He was teaching me about God. The greatest Muslim in the world was teaching me about God and being an everyday athlete and a champion and a responsibility to be philanthropic. My little head was spinning.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's when you had the landline and the home address. That's all we had. And we shared, and all through college, he would call me and stay in touch with me. And I kept thinking every time, hey, Nancy, the champ's on the phone. I'm like, I can't believe he's calling me. Like, and then Sports Illustrated did this 13-page feature on me my senior year, and I talked about Ali, and he goes, I've been watching you. I just finished reading Sports Illustrated, and it says how much you love, you know, like appreciate me, and, you know, I'm your hero. I'm like, you know, you're my hero. You're that person in my life that you've been everything to me. And he just took me under his wing.
That's
And
so,
the best part is, you know, the last 15 or so years after he passed, or before he passed, I got a chance to reciprocate. I got a chance to go to Phoenix and sit in the house and hold his hand and feed him his food and wipe food from, you know, what he was doing. It was such an incredible moment for me. Um, I don't know what I would do without him. It was just so, he was so remarkable. And here I am doing something for him, right? And just telling him thank you. Um, and just to have those moments with him alone in his house with Lonnie, his wife. I'm very humbled and very grateful of the access and, you know, just the access that they gave me
yeah.
until the funeral.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, how cool to yeah, to establish a relationship like that with the man who was your hero. And I also have to say, it strikes me that another hero of yours and the reason why you wore number 10 throughout your career was Walt Frazier.
Yep.
And you know, at one point, I understand you saw him or were introduced to him, whatever, and you said, "Hey, it's not just guys who idolize you. You also affected young white Jewish girls, you know, out in Queens." Tell me about meeting Walt Frazier too. I mean, these are
Oh,
two
that
iconic sports superstars of the decade, and you've got this like, you know, kind of personal relationship with them.
well, it's kind of, again, these stories are wonderful and amazing and a blessing. Actually, I was doing an appearance for a company in New York. He was also doing the appearance. It might have been in 1981. And you know, Brandon Steiner from Steiner Sports. And
Sure.
Brandon, I met him for the first time there. And Walt Frazier was one of the athletes. And like I went over to him and I was like, I couldn't say anything. You're like my hero. And then I walked back after a period of time and I went, you know, Walt, I just wanted to say you were my hero. He knew who I was. He knew what happened in college. He was aware of Old Dominion. And we became friends. We've become lifelong friends. And when I started, you know, it was like, he had Walt Frazier Enterprises. I started Nancy Lieberman Enterprises. I was stalking him. He had a home in St. Croix. I bought a home in St. Croix because he was just, you know, the only thing I didn't have was the sideburns,
Right.
right? And so, you know, when I see him, when I was coaching in the NBA with the Sacramento Kings and he was there, or at the Garden, we'd sit and chat. And, you know, sometimes I just shake my head in a great way that, like, the people that I love and idolized, you know, have had so much respect and kindness for me within my career.
Sure.
You know, you just never know.
Right.
But it's been great. And I love Walt to this day. He's fabulous.
That's amazing. Icons. Well, and I have to ask you, back in your days in Far Rockaway, so you're getting out there, you're playing on the courts, but you're having to, you're trading elbows, like you said, you're trading punches, you're having to get physical. You've got all kinds of great quotes about how, you're competing, you're getting the crap knocked out of you, but you have to get up for more. Tell me a little bit about, kind of, and I think there was a friend, Mark Munchnick, and his older brother would like take you to other courts to play. Tell me a little bit about that. You show up at a court, there can't be that many women there.
Well,
What's that like trying to establish yourself?
so Eric and his brother Mark, his older brother, they lived around the corner from me. So we'd always play, you know, ball. They played at the YMCA where I played in those leagues. Eric played at Far Rockaway High School. We were closer in age. And they would always, Mark would take us to parks to play and kind of throw me and Eric out there in the mix and see how we would respond. Mark was a big guy.
Yeah.
So he was always there. It was Mark and Eric who took me to Dr. J's camp for the first time. And I might have been 14 years old. And we get to camp and, you know, Julius just says hi to everybody. And they say, you know, Julius, you know, Nancy is a really great player. And, you know, he was just, you know, patted me on the head. He goes, you know, just keep playing hard. Well, I got the MVP at his camp.
Huh.
And when we were leaving, he goes, now, you know, play hard and do well, and you'll be fantastic, you know, like you would say to another young kid. So I come back the next year to his camp, and I have a gold medal from the Pan American Games. And he looks at me, I said, you know, Dr. J, like you told me to play hard and to work. And I made the USA team. And, you know, he's probably thinking, did she steal this medal? And I go, no, I made the Pan Am team and we won the gold medal. And he's like, you know, we coach together in the Big Three right now. So we see each other every weekend during the season. And we still talk about that. And he still tells the story where he looked at me and goes, did you steal that medal? And I go, no, like I probably took other things, but I didn't take the medal. So yeah, you know, some people they kind of give you that little push. He didn't even know he was giving me that push, but Julius, that was Dr. J. And he noticed me and he cared about me. And all these years later, we've been friends again, crazy. We've honored Julius at my charity. We love each other. I mean, he's my big bro.
Yeah.
You know, everybody needs a vet. He's
Right.
my vet.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. And about that time, you're beginning to play AU ball for the Chuckles. And I'm reading great quotes from your coach. He's like, yeah, we called her Fire. She was the queen of Harlem. I mean, there's just some great quotes from him. Tell me a little bit about that. And, kind of you're traveling a lot now, playing for them.
You know, it was fun. I was playing, you know, Far Rockaway High School, and this woman said to me, you need to go play in, you know, up in Rucker. And I'm like, wow, how am I going to get up to Rucker? So I first started, you know, probably taking some money out of my mom's wallet saying, hey, I'm going to the park, which was right down the street from me. And I'd go into Far Rockaway, get on the A train, change trains in Manhattan, you know, and then get it on 155th and walk into Rucker. Now I had t-shirts in my jacket, so I looked bigger on the train, and I was always glaring at people. So they thought, you know, man, what's wrong with this little skinny girl? And I'd go in the park and these guys would look at me like, little girl, are you lost? And I would say, no, are you? And the brothers were like, do you know where you are? I said, yeah, I'm at Rucker Park. And I asked one of the guys, I said, is your name Rucker? He goes, no. I said, good, it ain't your park. And I heard you were good and I need to be good. And can you help me? Well, it just was like one big thing of respect that this little redheaded girl would show up in the park. And they would ride the train home with me, the guys. I didn't know that I was teaching my mom and people around me not to be racist or profiling people that didn't look like me,
Mhm.
because we were thicker than thieves. And, you know, the guys, like I said, they come take me all the way to Far Rockaway. My mom would make them spaghetti. Then they get on the later train and go all the way back, you know, an hour or
God,
plus into Harlem.
that's amazing.
And there was no texting, so it was like, Fire, what day are you gonna come out here? And I'd say, okay, I'll come out Thursday and I'll get on the 4 and I should be there, you know, by 5:30 or something. And they would wait for me at the train station and walk into the park with me. Matter of fact,
It's amazing.
Kevin Durant just had an incredible documentary called Point Gods. I don't know if you heard of it.
Mm-mm.
His company 35 Ventures, you'll probably enjoy it. It's the greatest point guards in the history of New York City basketball. It came out like a year ago and there was a premiere in New York, and I was one of, in that list of, I don't know, 18, 19, you know, greatest point guards in the history of the game in
Sure.
New York City. Well, they asked where you wanted to do your interview, and I said I want to do it half court at Rucker Park. And that's where mine was, and people were yelling out their windows, fire, fire. And I'm like, yeah, well, now it's Lady Magic. um, but the love and the kindness, and man, I ain't afraid to go into Rucker Park. I'm not afraid to give people a hug or a high five. It's very meaningful to me how I was treated. I was, the Black community raised me in the parks. And when other people were telling me what I can't be, you know, all my Nancy Camp moments in life, you can't make the Olympic team, you can't play this, you can't do that. My guys were telling me what I could do.
Right.
And they played hard against me. They were getting me ready to play at that next level, whether it was Olympics, whether it was USA basketball, whether it was, you know, at Old Dominion, you know, major college basketball. So I'm really grateful,
Yeah.
very grateful.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like you said, so you're in high school, your class of 76, Far Rockaway, in the summer of 75. So you're going into your senior year. You have just finished your junior year. You make the Pan Am games. You make the Pan Am team. You're being coached by Kathy Rush, who, for anybody who's seen Mighty Max, is the coach at Immaculata. And you know, women's basketball, there might not be a sport that's changed more in the last 50 years, because that in the 70s, I think Immaculata and Delta State split 6 championships between them. You know, this is not Texas and Tennessee at this point. And she's the coach of Immaculata. You make the team. You're on a team with like Ann Myers from UCLA, Lucia Harris from Delta State, Pat Head, who became Pat Summit. You guys go down and you crush everybody. You win the gold, which you said obviously you brought back and showed Dr. J. What's that like though? You're by far the youngest on the team. What's it like being on a team like that? And you know, all of a sudden you're in Mexico City playing for gold.
It was interesting because you know, I don't know if I really understood the magnitude of it. I was so young, and I was just really happy to be on the team and to get to play some and to play, you know, at that point, you're not looking at your teammates as legends or former Hall of Fame players, because there were no women in the Basketball Hall of Fame at that point. But I knew that I had never seen women play basketball like they played. They were big, they were strong. Lucy Harris could have played in any generation. Pat was country strong. I mean, she was just bouncing people around. Some of the great, you know, Ann Myers, a Hall of Famer, Trish Roberts was unstoppable. So it was every day that I was in practice, I was getting better. You know,
Right.
I made some bonehead mistakes because I was so young, but it wasn't for lack of effort or trying. And plus, you know, I was 5'8", 5'9", and could dunk a tennis ball. like when I was at Rucker Park, I was like the carnival monkey. They go fire, hang on the rim. Okay. And I jumped because I was so athletic and stealth. And like it was just fun for them to go, you know, fire, grab the rim. Okie doke. And I just, can I come down now? And so in practice, I would just be hanging on the rim, or we'd be trying to dunk, tennis balls or things like that. But, my athleticism then had to translate into, there's EQ and IQ, right? Emotional intelligence, intellectual intelligence. And I had to morph into that next step of my understanding of the game and what I'm reading, what I'm seeing in front of me. But it wouldn't have happened without, the 75 Pan Ams and the 80 Olympic team.
Yeah.
76.
76, yeah. Yeah, and around that time, so you're going, so that's going into your senior year, and we'll talk about the Olympics in a second, but also now it's time to be recruited. And at that point, like I said, you've got these smaller schools, but all of a sudden out at UCLA, Ann Myers becomes, I think, the first player to get a full scholarship as a basketball player, and she's a couple of years ahead of you. So now all of a sudden, this is a possibility. Like, are your AAU coaches, your high school coaches saying, "Hey, you could be, you could get one of these"? Is that how that's working?
Well, my AAU coach was just the best. He's no longer with us, Lavoisier Lamar. I mean, he had the biggest afro in the world and those big mutt chops. And he'd come down the street with his silver Toyota. He was so big, he was a big man, and he'd have the seat all the way back. And it looked like the car was riding like this. And he'd come to Far Rockaway to pick me up and take me to Brooklyn or take me, to all the parks that we were playing.
Right.
He was the best, man. I just love that guy. Again, just how much he protected me and he helped me. So I'm playing AAU basketball and he's like, girl, you're going to have a chance for a scholarship. I'm like, I don't know. I can't go to school. We can't afford for me to go to school. But let me tell you the blessing. I am the only high school kid at the Pan Am tryouts. So you're in Warrensburg, Missouri, and there's, hundreds of coaches that are watching the talent. And
Right.
then there's the selection committee. Well, all those coaches that were there, they started recruiting me.
Right.
I was like there and they were around. I didn't have, it was like brochure
Right.
back then. It was like going on a summer vacation. Okay, here's 40 brochures. There was no recruiting trips.
Right.
So it was like, so I was already there and they were recruiting me at these tryouts. And the same thing in 76 at the Olympics, at the Olympic trials. I mean, coaches were coming up to me, talking to me, oh, you can go to Delta State, you can go to, Maryland, you can go to Old Dominion, you can go to Cal State Fullerton, UCLA. I mean, I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to go. But I wanted to go to Cal State Fullerton because that's where Billy Moore, my Olympic coach, went.
Right.
And I was told that Billy was going to leave Cal State Fullerton to take the UCLA job.
Right.
I mean, I'm 4. If I go to California and she leaves, what am I going to do? How am I going to get home? So I made a decision that I was going to go to Old Dominion because I could drive 7 hours from, Queens to Norfolk, Virginia. And also I wanted to go to a school that nobody had ever heard of, and they had a losing record. So, which is a little crazy because I wanted to be able to help change the course of a program.
Right.
And, 7 freshmen came in. And we had a pinky swear in the locker room. I'm taking Debbie Richards' job. Who are you? I'm taking Yvette Baggett's job. I'm taking, so-and-so's job, Wendy Larry's job. We swore we were going to take an upperclassman's job.
Yeah.
So every play, every drill, every moment that we were on the court together, if somebody wasn't playing hard, we'd look at them like, you going to take somebody's job like that? No.
Right.
Because, I don't know how many games they won, 6, 8, 10 games. But we don't want to be a part of that. We want to be elite.
Right.
So to be elite, we had to be elite every day. So, you know, I think we got into the top 10 my freshman year. I think we were 26-9. But we played Delta State, we played Immaculata, we played UCLA, we played Queens College, we played Stephen F. Austin, Texas. We played the best of the best.
Right.
And if you're going to get great, you better play against greatness, right? Iron sharpens iron. And then we got a taste of that, and then we didn't make it to the NCAA tournament. I missed a shot against NC State. I was not happy. That would have put us in the tournament. And I was like, that's never going to happen to me again. It's never going to happen again. So, you know, then we win the NIT, we go 30-4. I missed the shot again to put us in the NCAA tournament. Pissed.
Sure.
So again, I'm like, how can this happen 2 times? And then I came back, my coach challenged me to, you know, make Ignis an All-American, Jan Tremblay, All-State, to elevate my team. And she asked me one of the questions that changed my life. She said, do you make you good, or do you make other people around you good? And I went, oh yeah, no, I make everybody good. And she goes, Nancy, I said, what do you want me to do? She says, I need you to take less shots, because I was probably taking 25 shots a game. And I'm like, I'm a volume shooter. It's what I do. Because I need you to be efficient, but I need you to make people better. You know, you've led the nation in assists virtually every year. Okay. So my senior year, I was taking 11, 12 shots a game and averaging 17 points. Inga becomes an All-American, Jan becomes All-State, and boom, we win our first, you know, national championship.
Right.
And it was amazing. And then all of a sudden you start seeing that and you say, oh my gosh, this winning thing is real. And no matter how good you are, you can't do things by yourself.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. You need people around you, no matter how great you think you are. The greatest people in the world, Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Warren Buffett, you know, all these mega human beings, Oprah, you can't do it by yourself. And so I learned that lesson. Do you make you good, or do you make other people good?
Yeah.
So, and you know what? We win the 2 championships and I still got the bag, if you will.
Right.
I was still a 2-time player of the year in college basketball, and like the light went on, like, holy crap, this thing can work.
Yeah.
Just make other people better, and you can still get what you think you need.
Right.
It
And
changed my life.
And like you said, you know, you make Inga better. And then, oh, by the way, you guys are winning. Yeah, that steady progression, the WNIT semis, the WNIT championship, and then national championship. Then all of a sudden, Ann Donovan, who's 6'8", obviously passed away, which is you know, very sad. She is in a recruiting where all of a sudden, like, college basketball for women has changed dramatically. Joe Paterno is trying to help recruit her to Penn State, but she chooses to come to Old Dominion to play with you when you're a senior. She's a freshman. You guys win another national title. I mean, all of a sudden, you've got one of the most dominant teams of all time. Like you said, you were 125. I think you lost your first 2 games of college, and then you went 125-13 after that.
I missed the first 5 games my freshman year. I had mono.
Oh, there you go.
And the coach of the team, Pam Parsons, I'm laying in bed and she's calling me, you better effing get better. We just had 45 turnovers at Longwood. When we get home, you better be ready to play. I was like, oh my gosh, she's mad. Maybe her contract is due. So yeah, she wasn't happy with me that I was sick.
Yeah.
So
And she actually left after freshman year, and you get Marianne Stanley, who's 23 years old, and she's a Kathy Rush, you know, Immaculata disciple. What's it like having a coach who is probably a few months older than the seniors at that point?
well, it was difficult for me and Marianne at the beginning. I thought she was one of the best players I had ever seen. On the 1976 Olympic team, it came down, the 12th player came down to 2, Nancy Lieberman and Marion Crawford Stanley.
Yeah.
and I got, they picked the 12th pick for the future of the game instead of a 3-time All-American, maybe somebody who wasn't going to play. Marianne could have helped and done wonders for that team, even if she wasn't playing. She was only like 5'6", and it's hard for, smaller players to play internationally.
Sure.
But so I beat Marianne out for that 12th spot on the Olympic team. Then she comes to Old Dominion, and we had nothing to say to each other. It was just very awkward.
Yeah, that's tough.
Until we finally were able to meet, and I'm like, look, I didn't pick me. But you can teach me. You're my coach now, and if you want to, I can help you win. Teach me what you know. And
Yeah.
she was amazing, and I love her. I'm so appreciative of her for what she did for me, and she's the one who challenged me, to be less selfish.
Sure.
She had, the confidence to be able to do that, and she won 3 national championships, and she's a Hall of Famer. She's coached in the W. She coached it all over college. She's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, she gave up her job at USC because she fought for women's rights. That's how convicted Marianne Stanley is about growing the game of basketball for women.
Yeah.
She said, no, this is not right. There's no equality here.
Right.
And she ended up losing her job.
Wow. And speaking of no quality, that 76 Olympic team, which, again, it's you and Lucy Harris and Myers, you guys, I mean, in your accommodations, there's 12 of you on the team. You guys have 2 bedrooms. There's basically 6 bunks in each room. I mean, my guess and the men didn't have that. So, how does that sit with, the team? And, do you complain, or do you just say, all right, we just have to, prove ourselves again? Or how does that work?
Rich, you don't know what you don't know. And at that point, what did we know? We're here in Montreal. The truth be known, they didn't, ABA USA did not have a budget for the women's basketball team to go to Montreal. Our coach, Billy Moore, and the late, they're both not with us anymore, Bill Wall, who was the president of ABA USA. They put our travel. We had to go to a qualifying tournament in Hamilton, Ontario. And so we had to qualify to get to Montreal. Nobody thought we were going to. Well, we make it. And then Hunter Lowe, one of the executives, the CEOs of Kodak, says, I know you don't have a place to stay. You don't have money for, stay with us. And Kodak put us up in hotels in Rochester, New York. I'm sure you've never heard this story. And then, Billy Moore and Bill Wall put all our travel on on their personal credit cards to get us to Montreal from Rochester. The players didn't even know this. We found this out after.
Oh,
so we didn't know anything.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's amazing. Wow. Okay. Well, things have come a long way. And yeah, so then you graduate, and I have to say, so your senior year, yeah, you mentioned, Muhammad Ali read that Sports Illustrated article about you, and this is one of the longest features I think I've ever read.
And Curry Kirkpatrick, who was maniacal, wrote a nice story. He was always like looking for the evil or in somebody. People couldn't believe Curry wrote a great story.
Yeah. And some of the quotes are fantastic. I mean, I've got to assume that you were laughing when you read some of them. You're raw, loud, and ornery. And he also said, actually kind of going back to the whole kind of New York point guard thing, the insolent, uncontrollable, and quintessential New York street urchin has become the articulate spokesperson for her sport as you were coming out of college and turning pro. I mean, you must have been reading this going, what the hell? What were your thoughts when you saw that?
We were just happy we were in Sports Illustrated. They had not done a story like that ever on women. And it was, good publicity, bad publicity. We were the best in college basketball. And in his own language, his own love language, Curry was sharing that he was moved by the fans, the mascots, he spent a lot of time with me there. So, and he met my mom, and my mom was, Mr. Kirkpatrick, come here, let me talk to you, they hit it off, and it was something that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's an amazing feature. And so then sure enough, you win the national championship again that year. That was written before your senior year. So then you go pro. And at the time, the professional league for women was called the WBL, and you're drafted to the Dallas Diamonds. The league had been in existence for like 2 years at that point. You go to Dallas, you're their first overall pick. They had been 7-28. They go 27-9. I mean, a complete reversal of fortune. You lose in the playoffs. At one point, you guys outdraw the Mavs, who were in their first or second year. But then the league disbands, and there's no pro league for a couple of years. And then the WABA starts up, and another team called the Dallas Diamonds comes into existence, and you play for them. You win the championship, and you signed a big contract at the time. And curious, kind of with the leagues kind of coming and going, what's going through your mind at that point?
Well, my senior year, I knew that I was going to be drafted in the WBL. I didn't know where. I thought I was going to Chicago, actually.
Okay.
And I thought my teammate Ing Nissen was going to Dallas with the first pick, and I was going to Chicago with the second pick, which would have probably made me feel better because it's a big city, and I didn't know that much about Dallas at the time. But prior to that, I was playing at Xavier High School in New York, 13th Street, I think it is, Xavier High School.
Yeah, yeah.
And they had NBA Pro-Am. So I was playing with Charlie Chris and all these other guys. Well, Jane Pauley came down and did a story that there's this, woman, Nancy Lieberman, doing, well, Dr. Buss saw it. And then he called in Jerry West. The next day they called me and said, we want you to play for the Lakers and in summer league. And I was like, really? And they said, your coach is going to be Pat Riley. He's a new coach. He's just coming out of the TV booth. You know that documentary on the Lakers?
Yeah.
I watched it like 3-4 times, and I'm like, oh my God, this is when I was there. I didn't even know all this stuff was going on. So I get there. Pat Riley was not happy to have me on his team because he had told the team this is going to be serious. It's his first coaching job. And he, in his mind's eye, long story short, didn't think I was the player that he was envisioning to be his point guard. So they tell him it's going to happen. Sorry, Pat, she's coming tomorrow. So I come, and in our first practice, it's a legendary, Pat Riley practice, and it's 3 hours. And he's like, okay, I need 5 players out here. Every time he said, I need 5, bam, I sprinted onto the court, and they're like, okay. So he goes, okay, we're going to run this play. I'd run it. I'd make a mistake. We'd all make mistakes. They'd coach us up. I'd get repetition. And then I would, understand what he was looking for. I'd come off the court to the next set of 5 going, hey, if you don't know how to run it, I do. I'd be happy to help you. And so then, they beat the crap out of me on the 3-hour practice. So they go in the locker room after practice. I know this because Pat Riley's been making money off this story for 30 years. I'm kind of ticked at him. And he's telling this story in 2014 at the NBA Coaches Symposium. And I'm sitting next to Nick Nurse, who we coached together in the G League. And I have his whole thing filmed because I'm holding an iPad up. And he's telling the story I'm telling you. And he's like, right, Nancy? And I'm like, yeah, yes, that happened. And Nick Nurse goes, you played for Pat Riley? I said, stop talking. He's talking about me. And I couldn't believe he's telling every GM, every coach, assistant coach, and he's telling this story. So then he turns around, he goes, we go into the coaches meeting. And Dr. Buss was there, Coach McKinnon, everybody's in there with Jerry West. And he goes, who the hell does she think she is? She's telling people where to go, what to cut, how fast to run. They knock her down. They knock her, they're physical. She doesn't cry. And she tried to start 2 fist fights. It's like, what are we going to do with her? And well, you're going to continue to coach her up and play her. And okay. So Pat's telling the story. He goes, and Nancy, four days later, who is my starting point guard? It was you, right? And I go, yes. And Nick goes, "You were the starting point guard?" I'm like, "Nick, stop." And he goes, "We go through summer league. We have a great time. The players protected her. She was just great to have in the locker room." And he goes, "She changed my life." And I'm like, "I did? How did I change your life?" He goes, "Every day you were outmanned. They were physically bigger, stronger, more athletic. And every day you came in, you were tough. You weren't afraid. You went after it. It didn't matter what happened." And he said, "You taught me something about life. When I'm coaching and things were not going my way," he goes, "I used to think about you. Like, how did this woman overcome these hurdles?" And I'm like, seriously? I mean, I was blown away. So my point is, you never know whose life you're changing. And, he knew that I was not, Ali taught me back in 79, he was respect everybody, fear nobody. I am not afraid to coach in the NBA. I'm not afraid to be a head coach in the Big Three, the NBA G League. I'm not afraid to play at 39. I'm not afraid to play at 50. I'm not afraid. Two things can happen. I can win, I can lose. I'm a minimalist. And then you move on and you learn. So then I go to the WBL. You said it, we were terrible. We're playing at SMU. I did my own contract. Julius Erving sent me his ABA contract and said, "Follow this."
Really?
And I was like, okay. So when I negotiated, I was like, "Well, you averaged this many people last year, and this was your TV coverage. And if I come in and we average, 4,000 paid at $10 a ticket, and we get this number of, media across the country and blah, 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 more sponsorships." And I said, I would like $100,000. And the second highest, or the highest paid player, was Ann Myers, who was making 50. So when I went in there, instead of emotionally going, "I want 100,000," I laid out a business plan, with Julius's guidance, and they paid me $100,000.
It's amazing.
But we did outdraw the Mavs a couple of times,
Yeah.
and we were selling, Moody Coliseum was filled every night that we played, and we lost in the 5th game of the championship. I had hurt my ankle and I had sprained my ligaments, and I was wrapped so hard, it was like I was wearing a cast.
Right.
But Nebraska beat us, and then when we came back in 84, 83, 84, we won the championship. So I was thrilled for that.
Yeah. And then the USBL starts, and that's a really interesting league. I mean, I remember like the Rhode Island team had, Manute Bowl and Muggsy Bogues on it. And, you had these guys, Hot Rod Williams was there for like a year before he could play in the NBA, and Spud Webb came out of NC State, was there for a year or two. So you had like, pro talent coming through here, and you joined the Springfield Fame, and you're playing for Henry Bibby, who had been in the NBA for a long time. His brother was a major league pitcher. You're on a team with Michael Adams of Boston College, Billy Goodwin of St. John's. Tell me what that experience is like. You are, if I understand correctly, you are the first female to play in a men's league. If I understand correctly, tell me what that was like.
Well, again, it was a happening in Springfield, the home of, basketball, the birthplace of basketball because of Dr. Naismith. Henry was brilliant, and to play with Michael Adams and to play with Billy Goodwin, and those guys are still like my forever brothers, which is
Yeah.
really amazing. And like I used to say to Michael, he had that little kind of weird little push three. I was like, "Michael, you got to work on your shot because I need tickets, and you're my ticket." Get ticket, we used to laugh like that. And we get out of practice, we go on the track, we would train, we would shoot until he was like, "I can't do this anymore." And then Michael had a nice career, with Washington and then Denver. And I mean, it was hard, but I was appreciative that Henry let me play, and we did really well. We were like the second or third best team in the league.
Yeah.
And then the next season, I went to the Long Island Knights, and the late Dean Meminger was coaching.
Yep.
And my teammate was Ray Richardson, Jeff Houston. We were playing against, Tyrone Bogues. And one of the first games we were playing in Long Island, and coach says, okay, Michael, you're playing Muggsy. He goes, I ain't gonna guard him. I said, I will. And they looked at me and he was so excited. He goes, Nancy, go in the game for Michael Ray and guard Muggsy Bogues. I'm like, okay. He didn't want to get beat by this little guy.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. It's okay. I'll play.
Right.
But so I forget who the player was, but Othell Wilson, who was the point guard at Virginia with Ralph Sampson.
Sure. UVA.
So I'm denying him the ball on a sideline out of bounds play, and he just hits me square in the chest and knocks me down. My teammates jump on him, throw him down. Michael Ray has his forearm on his neck. You don't touch my baby. You leave my baby alone. And I'm like, man, can you move? I want him to, yeah. And you don't ever touch me again, because these guys will kick your ass, and they're serious about it. Don't ever touch me again. And I was like, okay, you guys can go back. And I went back to the bench, and Dean goes, did you just ask them to move? I said, yeah, I wanted to let him know how I felt. And he said, they're like, you're such a badass. I said, I gotta so nobody touched me again. Nobody tried to fight with me, because they're like, I threw a punch at Othell. And Ralph calls me, goes, did you get into a fight with Othell Wilson? I said, yeah, he's lucky he moved his head. These are like, you can't make this stuff up. It's
It's
real.
unbelievable. These are fantastic. And I'm curious, like just the small things, like, do they give you a separate locker room? Where are you changing?
Nope. I had to change in the same locker room as the guys.
Okay. So just like a corner of the locker room for you, and that's
Yep.
that. Okay.
And some of my guys were fantastic. They would hold a towel up, and I was very fortunate to have great teammates.
Yeah.
And Michael Ray, like I do the TV for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and
Yeah.
Michael Ray lives out that way. So I always see him. And he just had a book come out, or a documentary that I went on camera. And I was telling the story about, I had a room with Michael Ray Richardson. And one day, the Fire nickname might have paid off for real. I was just like, okay, if I go to the bathroom one more time and my butt hits the water, I'm this, and the hair on the sink, stop it. I said, you just put the toilet seat down, and if you're gonna do this with the pick, clean your hair up and put it in the garbage. I said, I spend every night coming in hotels with you. There's these chicks in the locker room trying to hook up with you. I have to give them the he's coming back to the room with me speech, which sounds kind of odd. But we were roommates, and Michael stuttered. He's like, this is it was amazing. Yes. He's the best guy. He goes, remember when I was just doing my, I'm like, don't do that to me again. I had to let it go.
That's fantastic. That's great. Oh man.
Uh,
And then and then and then 10 years go by, and the Phoenix Mercury, well, the WNBA is going to start in 1997. And like you said, like I said, you're 39 years old. The Phoenix Mercury draft you with an elite pick, and you're on the team. What's it like? You're playing for Cheryl Miller, who probably looks at you as somebody who she probably had your poster on the wall when she was in high school. What's it like? You know, you're back in the pros, you're playing with a bunch of girls who you've kind of opened the door for a lot of them. What's that like?
well, I was at the Olympics in '96 with Magic Johnson, and we're sitting in the stands watching the women play. And he goes, so you gonna play in the new women's league, the W? And I said, I don't know. And he goes, Nancy Lieberman, I had never heard you say I don't know. Well, I mean, I said, yes, I'm going to play. So I go home from Atlanta. I go home and I look at my husband, Tim, and I'm like, TJ, come here. TJ's 3 years old. I said, come in the kitchen. I said, go in there and tell your father that your mother's coming out of retirement and she's going to play in the WNBA. Now, I just got inducted in '96 into the Basketball Hall of Fame. So TJ runs into the other room and he goes, and Tim's big guy, 6'7", and he goes, "Daddy, mommy's coming out of retirement." And he goes, "What?" "Mommy's gonna play." And he comes in and he's like, "What, you just got inducted. I mean, what happened?" Now he was playing with the glass half empty. You
Right.
know, what happens if you can't play at that level? I said, "Well, I'm gonna find out." So one of my teammates from the Springfield fame, uh, Ron Spivey,
Okay. Yep.
he had moved here to Dallas and we had connected at my basketball camps. I'm like, "Spivey, I need you to train me." And he was just training me every single day. I got in really great shape and I ended up making it in playing for Cheryl. I mean, Cheryl's my girl. I'm so proud of her.
Yeah.
And it was really cool, to be able to play for Phoenix in front of 14,000 people every game. That city just embraced the Mercury like nothing I've ever seen before. And so we make it to the playoffs my first year. And I thought about maybe playing, but I had Detroit had an offer and Washington, the Mystics, had an offer for me to be their head coach. Detroit wanted me to be their head coach and their general manager. And so when I met with Wes Unseld, he was the GM, but he really wanted that title. I said, "Wes, I don't care about the title, just let me have the responsibility." But he really wanted to do that. And then Rick Sund, who was the Mavs GM,
Sure.
who I knew from Dallas, he goes, "No, you're here. You'll have all the support you need." And they were great. And, we go 17-13. We have the best expansion record ever, percentage wise, of a team, whether it was hockey, baseball, football, or the NBA. We missed the playoffs on a tiebreaker. And then the second year, we become the first team in WNBA history, expansion team, to make the playoffs.
Yep.
And now I'm cutting my teeth on coaching. And I just fell in love with being in the foxhole with those players and trying to get them to levels that you just didn't think you can do.
Right.
But, I mean, Billy Moore came in for a month and I said, "Why do we do this drill and then that drill?" I said, because I was like a robot. "Okay, we're going to do half court, then we're going to do layups, then we're going to do this." And I'm like, "Can you explain like why we're doing this in this progression?"
Yeah.
I can play, but I really didn't know. And she just coached me up. Pat was fantastic. Bobby Knight, who taught me how to curse on the front end of a sentence and the back end of a sentence. Bobby was fantastic in just giving me sage advice. Like I call him up and I'm like, "So I'm thinking about doing that." "No, oh, girl, you got to stop. Okay, here's what you have to do." I'm like, "Okay. Do I have to pay you for help?" So I had really great people helping me
Yeah.
and giving me their time. Doug Collins was a great mentor my first year.
Okay.
So I've had good
You
people
coaching the
around.
Pistons at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Grant Hill was there. Joe Dumars was there. It was good.
Yeah. And there, I mean, and so when you're head coach, this Frank Layden is the former Utah Jazz coach is coaching. Obviously, Cheryl Miller, Orlando Woolridge. Later Bill Laimbeer would come in. I mean, it's what's that like? What's the dynamic when you're coaching against, I don't know, Orlando Woolridge or something like that?
You know what? I mean, we all want to beat each other, but it's the beginning of the WNBA. So, we're all working together for the greater good.
Right.
And, Val Ackerman was, our president, and she's like the smartest person I know. She's just brilliant. And David Stern really trusted her.
Mhm.
And I played against Val when she was at Virginia. And, it was just cool to be able to be out there with so many players. Really, you knew Lobo,
Yep.
you knew Cheryl Swoops, you knew Lisa Leslie, you knew me and Lynette Woodard. There were so many players you didn't even know who
Right.
emerged as stars. So it was so cool to play in the league the first year. But I love coaching in the Garden. I love coaching and just looking at the blue seats and going, "This is amazing." you know, to have played in the Garden with the US team and Old Dominion, and now to come back and coach. I mean, it's a childhood dream.
Sure.
And to
Yeah.
hear John Condon, you know,
Yeah.
welcome to the magic world of Madison Square Garden Center. Tonight for Old Dominion University, number 10, Nancy Lieberman. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's awesome. That's fantastic. And so then you continue coaching, you go to the G League, and you're coaching Dallas. Dallas gets a team, the
That's
Dallas
the
Legends.
legends.
And Donnie Nelson is he the owner of the team? Is that
He was the owner of the team. He bought it. I think he bought the 66ers from Colorado or something.
okay? And so and now all of a sudden you're president of basketball operations is Spud Webb. You're coaching with, or your GM is Del Harris. What's it like? Now you're coaching. Antonio Daniels is on the team. This is a guy who's played with Tim Duncan and David Robinson. Like, what's it kind of like? Coaching the men now.
Well, it was very normal and comfortable for me because I've always been around guys and played. And Donnie was like, it was funny how that worked out. One morning, it was about 7 in the morning, and I went to put some mail. There's like a blue box in front of a Starbucks about 10 minutes from my house. So I went to put some mail in there, and Donnie was walking out with Rolanda Blackman. And I thought, oh my gosh, Ro's going to coach the team. I heard about it. And Donnie stops me. He goes, "Hey, sis, how you doing?" I'm like, "I'm good." I said, "Congratulations." And he goes, he's like Rain Man. And I think he's looking at me funny, and he's like, "Okay, what's your number? Your number's still the same." So he calls me and he goes, "Let's meet at Starbucks." And we met like 4 or 5 times. Then he goes home and he says to his wife and his daughter, "I think the best man for the job is not a man. I think the best man for the job is a woman." And they go, "What?" She's played against men. She's played in men's minor leagues. She's played on the Harlem Globetrotter Tour. She played for the Lakers. She understands, guys. He said he said, "You checked every box. You've been a head coach in the WNBA, blah, blah, blah." And he hired me. And I can remember like the day before my press conference, I guess there were some people who did not want this to happen in the G League. And Donnie calls me in the middle of the night and he goes, "Nancy, if they don't let me bring you to the press conference tomorrow, I'm going to rescind my offer for this team." He goes, "This is exactly what Martin Luther King marched and died for." And I went, "Did you just quote Martin Luther King?" He goes, "Yes." And I went, "Okay." He goes, "I'll see you tomorrow." And we went to the press conference and it happened. It
Yeah,
was amazing.
that's awesome.
But let me tell you, Darvin Ham, Eric Musselman, Chris Finch, um, Nick Nurse, all those guys in the league, they wanted to beat my team, but they empowered me. They helped me. Finch let me follow him. I flew down to RGV and just, shadowed him like a year before I started coaching. They were so good to me. I'm very grateful for those guys. They wanted my success, but they didn't want it against them,
Right.
which is fair, which is very fair.
Yeah, of course. And they've certainly, had their own success. I mean, Finch right now still coaching. Pretty cool. And then you parlay that, all of a sudden now you're with the Sacramento Kings for a couple of years. You coach under George Karl. That must have been, he's a piece of work. What was it like? How did that work? How did getting hired by George Karl happen? And obviously Vlade Divac, a legend for the Kings, is the GM. Tell me about that, becoming an assistant with the NBA team.
I happened to be at the All-Star Weekend in, I think it was at the Barclays Center. And I'm sitting there with the Retired Players Association. I was on the board, and then somebody comes up to me, or somebody texts me and said, "Hey, Did you hear what George Karl said at his press conference today? That he thinks a woman can coach in this league, and he would consider hiring you. Somebody texted to me, and I'm like, what? I left. I came home. Then the Kings invited me to volunteer for summer league. Once summer league was over, I came home and Vlade called me and he goes, "We would like to hire you as our assistant coach." Like, that's amazing.
That's cool. Did you know George beforehand? Did you just know him from around the game, or?
No, we weren't friends, but
Sure.
you cross paths every once in a while.
Sure.
So, but it was great. I mean, we had Rondo, DeMarcus Cousins, Rudy Gay, Bellinelli, Omri Caspi, Willie Cauley-Stein, Seth Curry. We had some great players.
Yeah. And George, Dave Jorger takes over the next year, and you stay on the staff as an assistant for him when Carl's gone. What was it like working for Dave?
Dave Yeager is one of the best, most coolest people I know. So I was going to coach summer league that year, and then we hired, Dave Yeager, and he came in and he goes, "Look, I know you're supposed to do this. I would really like to coach 2 or 3 or 4 games to get my feet wet with the organization." I'm like, "You're the head coach. I'll do anything you want." And he's brilliant, by the way. And then like he calls me and he's like, "Coach, what are you doing?" I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Can you meet me in the practice facility in 10 minutes?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's lined the chairs up across half court, and he played college tennis, and we're banging balls with each other. Let's just play tennis for 45 minutes. He goes, "I have got to lose some weight." And so here we are playing tennis in the facility, and I'm like, did he just call me out of my office to play tennis? And then we go to summer league, same thing. He calls me, goes, "Hey, 6 a.m. in the lobby." I'm like, "Okay, what are we doing?" He goes, "Me and you against the broadcasters for the Grizzlies. We're gonna play tennis with them." I was, "Okay, whatever, whatever you want." And every time I see him, it just makes me smile because he's the greatest guy ever, and
Yeah.
he's brilliant.
Yeah.
So it's good. I've had some great people, I can remember sitting behind the bench one of our first games. Gosh, it was crazy. And Seth was sitting on the end of the bench, and Curry comes down and he Steph shoots the ball, and he turns and he stares at his brother, and the ball's still in the air, and he's turned around, and I'm like, "That was so good." And the coaches look at me and I'm like, "Not that good."
We
They're
need better
like,
defense.
you can't cheer for the other guy. I was like, it was just so cool.
That's awesome. And now you're coaching in the Big Three. So Ice Cube and some other guys, come together and put together a league. I think it's 12 teams, and your roster, like there's guys like, well, as you mentioned, Dr. J's involved, Michael Cooper's involved. You've got on your team your son. What's that like, coaching your son?
Let me go back to Ice Cube because he's one of the most fascinating people I've ever been around.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
brilliant. He's a man of faith. He's a great husband, great, father. He listens to the people. He gives you input. It's not just my way or the highway. That 360 communication with him is real.
Sure.
If we have a coaches meeting on a Monday and we have, we need another official, he's like, "Okay, boom, next weekend we have a third official." He's really good about things like that. So, he started the league because he missed Kobe's 60-point game at the end of his career. And he's a big, Laker Kobe fan. And he was just kind of moping around, and his wife said, "O'Shea, do something. I mean, you can't keep doing this." So he and Jeff Quantinence, his business partner, got together and created the Big Three. And really, they beat the NBA. It seems like they beat FIBA, the NCAA. They beat everybody to 3-on-3. He's innovative. The arenas are packed. I don't know if you've ever seen a game or been in an arena. There's such an incredible vibe. It's
Yeah.
not just suits.
Yeah.
It's real people, white, black, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, young, old. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's and people are high-fiving. It's like a melting pot of humanity. The music, he gets the artists that come out and kind of entertain. The game is, I mean, you know, you had Joe Johnson, Birdman, Carlos Boozer, Allen Iverson, Mike Bibby, Gilbert Arenas. I mean, Katino Mobley, Big Baby Davis. Um, uh, you know, there were just so many great players.
Yeah. It's like a
Yeah.
great kind of mashup of players, some older guys, some younger guys, just like everybody can ball. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, Katino Mobley, you know, when we won the championship my first year, he hit the game-winning shot in Barclays Center in front of 17,000 people and over 1 million people watching it on Fox. And when you have, you know, just pros, and that's, you know, people came out to play out of respect for Cube. But it was monumental for Cube to be able to hand that trophy to my team, because I'm sure people are like, you're going to have a woman coaching. And you know what, the other thing he said to me, my mom was sick, that's why I left the NBA. And Vlade was a blessing. I said, I gotta go. My mom, I don't know how long I'm gonna have her. She was already 88, and she died actually 2 years ago today. And I said, Vlade, after Summer League, I need to be with my mom. And he goes, Nancy, go, you go. Peja, come here, tell her to go. He
That's
just
right.
got it as a human being.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in my house in 1988, excuse me, 2018, my phone rings, I'm watching the NCAA tournament, I'm watching Straight Outta Compton, I'm going back and forth, and my phone rings, and I'm like, yo, and somebody goes, yo. I go, yo, who is this? He goes, it's Ice Cube, and I'm like, how'd you get my number? I'm Ice Cube. Do I call you Mr. Ice? Do I call you Mr. Cube? What do I call you? And he's like, look, I'm sitting in a room with, you know, guys predominantly who look like me. I would like you to be the first female head coach in a men's professional league. And I'm like, okay. I said, are you trying to check a box? And he goes, no. I said, don't you hate when you check a box for people? He goes, yes. And I said, why do you want me here? He goes, I think you can win. I said, that I did want to hear that. And he goes, Nancy, you can tell your agents at Octagon, you'll be the highest paid coach in the league. That's exactly what I said. I was like, what? He goes, whatever we pay Dr. J, George Gervin, Rick Mahorn, you know, Rick Barry, Michael Cooper, you know, Gary Payton, you will be the highest paid coach in the league. That was historic.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable that I didn't have to fight for equality. He
Yeah.
said, this is what you're going to get. This is what you do. And, you know, this is my 6th year with being the head coach of Power.
Yeah.
I feel very blessed. And again, I have a lot of, you know, gratitude for the opportunities that have come my way throughout my whole career, but especially now in the Big Three.
Yeah. That's awesome. And what is it like having TJ play for you?
You know, at first it was like, man, how's this thing going to work? But, you know, your kid has to be at that level.
Right.
Okay, because this is a
Yeah.
no BS league. If he can't play, and if you know me, I would trade him if he couldn't play. If Doc Rivers can trade Austin Rivers, you know, you don't want to lose your credibility.
Right.
So I knew TJ could play. You know, he had played at Maccabi Tel Aviv, he played at Holon, he played at Jerusalem, he played, you know, EuroLeague. I knew he was at that level.
Yeah.
Then we had to work out what we were going to do. Are you going to call me mom? I've got 3 mics on me. Are you going to coach? How do you want to handle this? And he goes, I'm going to call you coach. Fantastic. We'll do it that way. He hits the game-winning 3 in Chicago, and he turns around and he runs, mom, mom. And I'm like, Coach Mom.
Coach.
But it's been a joy. He's such a great player, and he just knows the game. And, you know, he knew from the beginning he had to integrate himself with our players. He's got to be one of the boys. He can't be, you know, that's why When I was my first coaching job, Doug Collins came to me and he says, "Will you please hire Chris Collins? I'll pay for him." And I'm like, "Well, why don't you just keep him on the Pistons?" He goes, "Even though Grant knows him and they were teammates, people will think he's a mole, and that's going to be very difficult."
Yeah.
So, Chris Collins cut his teeth, coaching with me before Tommy Amica called me and goes, "Well, I'm going to take Chris Collins." Okay, great. So Chris went to Harvard. So, TJ knew that he had to earn his stripes in the locker room with his teammates. I'm not running out and going to dinner and hanging out with you guys after the game. I have a different life. And, this is year 3 for him. And we just elevated him. Glenn Rice is my captain. Royce White is my co-captain. And TJ just got elevated to co-captain after 3 years.
And I have to ask you, tell me a little bit about Nancy Lieberman Charities.
Well, it's very important to me. We've in 12 years, we've raised over $11 million cold hard cash, and that's what we've given out to communities. We've built 128 dream ports, those parks that we donate to inner cities, boys and girls clubs. And we have, really it's a community, and it's a pop-up classroom, where kids can commune, they can learn. We have STEM, financial literacy, kids and cops, civic engagement, and career readiness, and accredited programming. That's not like super hard. We want to make it easy, but we want to teach. Mm-hmm. We have over 5.5 million kids a year on our dream ports all over the country. And we just signed a partnership with the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. So we're going to do 45 ports for them in the next 5 years. We've sent 100 high school seniors to college, and we're really proud of all the graduating classes that we've had with that. We did finish a super cool program last week that we've been doing for years called Shop with the Cop, and we work with Under Armour, and police officers, 15, 20 of them come, and we have 75 kids. We have 2, at 1 hour and then another hour with kids, and they shop in the store, and cops just morph with the kids, and they're holding hands, and they're, officer friendly. Should I wear these shoes with this shirt? And the kids are hugging police officers, and they're like, "Thank you, I love you so much." And it just makes you melt to see that this generation of kids are going to learn that we can have friendship and we can do things together. And we're just trying to bridge that gap of, love, communication, and caring. So we just do a lot of cool things, racial social justice lecture series at HBCUs. We do 4 at a high school, 4 at colleges. And we're just trying to do our part. Right. And we're trying to, if I can get a kid to college and change their trajectory, like we said, an hour ago, a kid's life will be different. Right. Because you're going to meet people. You never know who your next friend, boss, whatever is going to be. So we're a children's charity. We're a 501c3. 75 to 80% of the money we raise goes to programming. Some charities are fantastic, but, a lot of their, costs go, for inner office, 40, so maybe 45% of money goes to the programming. And, we pride ourselves on, 75 to 80%. And that's why we get audits, and we make sure that we're doing the things we say we would do. Yeah.
It's amazing for anybody who looks it up at Nancy Lieberman Charities online. I mean, the map of where your parks are, where your courts are, I mean, literally all over the country. It's staggering to see. Look, I've taken a ton of your time, so I really appreciate that. I could listen to these stories all day. I saw a great quote. Your assistant coach, was it Jerry Busson at Old Dominion? Yeah. Somebody was talking to him and asking about, who are Nancy's comps at this point in her, career. And he said, and this is like in 1980, he said this: Nancy Lieberman is an electric car. Basically, there are no comps. And I thought to myself, that's about as prescient a comment as you can come up with in 1980, given where we are now. So,
That's great. That's nice of him to say. Very nice of him. But really, thank you so much. This has been great, and I hope I got to, all the things that you needed to hear. But thank you. I appreciate you.
Nancy, really appreciate it. This was awesome. A lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Okay. And thank you for listening to Chasing Hardware. I've been your host, Rich Lumello. The Michael Stanley Band brought us in, and the Suburbs with Life is Like are going to take us out. Speak to you next time.
Tonight, it feels like life. Come on. Life is like. Life is like. Life is like what it